Every day, we meet people from different walks of life. And often the moment we notice they're different from us, we automatically settle with an idea of them that was formed from our limited personal experience, or worse, someone else's. In 2017, my wife and I left to India as volunteers to help children living on the streets. Have you ever been to a city of 19 million people? It's out of this world. And I want you to imagine homeless dogs everywhere, and cows lying in the middle of the streets, monkeys stealing apples from temple altars, greasy clanking steel trains, incredible festivals and colors, amazing spice markets, and shouts of freshly brewed chai tea echoing in the streets and bus stations. It was incredible. But something happened. The cultural shock that I felt in India was so hard. As diverse and fascinating as India was on one hand, I quickly began to hate my experience. There were so many people, and they were pointing at us and staring at us. Because of overcrowding, they'd be right up against you, arms and legs touching yours. You couldn't escape. It was hot. There was no air conditioning, which made for some really sweaty interactions. Sometimes a waiter would bring you food and then just stare at you while you ate. Sometimes merchandise and prices for foreigners was 10 to 20 times what they charged locals, which created this feeling of distrust, inequality, and unfairness. There was no cold water. And there was honking all the time, day and night. It was loud. My experience for India, my excitement faded rather quickly. And for the next 6 weeks, I was living two conflicting worlds, trying desperately to love and appreciate this culture, but struggling a lot. But why was it so hard? I'd already been to more than 30 countries at this point in my life. Why was this so hard? I didn't know how to deal emotionally with the discomforts and the differences in India. I even had a few negative experiences with a few negative people, as you might expect in any part of the world, but I let it blind me. I became closed off. I became defensive. I wouldn't let them in. My mind was made up. You're just trying to scam me. You don't care about me. Get away from me. You just charge me 10 times more than you charge the person in front of me. Who are you people? What is this culture? I actually started to feel like I was better than them. And I couldn't escape the one-track narrative taking control of my thoughts and my actions. In my mind, I had even failed as a mental health therapist because I couldn't find a solution. The discomforts and the differences that I hated soon got me to thinking that I hated the people. I left India with a promise to never return. I knew who the people were, I knew what the culture was about, and I didn't need anyone telling me otherwise. But in 2019, I decided it was time to go back. I had to work on my own biases and give myself a chance to do something intentional, to let go of barriers and misunderstandings. But I was scared. What if the plan failed? What if it was worse than 2 years ago? But I went to work. For years as a licensed clinical social worker, I've been challenging my own clients to apply cognitive behavioral techniques to help them overcome their fears and anxieties. So I personalized some of my favorite methods and came up with these 5 things to change my views towards the people of India. First, I identified my fears. I wrote them down and then tried to look through a different lens to see it differently. Being in India already taught me there were a lot of things I knew I would struggle with. So I would write arguments against each of those. For example, people constantly ask you to take selfies, and people staring at me, and just generally the crowds of people. I wrote down, smile, laugh, have fun with the people. It doesn't hurt a thing. They just like seeing someone new. I'm different looking. They're curious. How many times have I looked at somebody who was different from me and been curious about them? Was I being rude? No. I just wanted to become their friend. Maybe that's how they feel about me too. And instead of being overwhelmed by the crowds of people, I can remember that individuals with stories, they make up crowds of people. To So try to see them that way, as individuals instead of just another number. Writing things down helped me to see in new positive ways and got all my fears out as I started this journey. And I added to this list constantly throughout my time in India. Second, I wrote a compelling and a meaningful mantra to help me to focus on the good in the people. This is a part of my mantra. There is good in every person. I want to find that good. Every human deserves kindness, acceptance, positivity, compassion. Everybody's on a journey right now. How do I want to contribute to their current journey? What might someone need in this very moment? I would read this constantly throughout the day until it stuck. And then I would immediately look up at somebody and see them for who they were. A valued person on a journey in life. This mantra helped me stay connected to my deeper values and beliefs so I could call upon them in the time of need. Third, I said yes when I wanted to say no. And served others when feeling uncomfortable. I met this really cool guy named Yadnesh. He taught me about his culture. He took me around the city. He took me out to eat. He was so kind. He even took me to see his family during one of the biggest festivals in India called Diwali, where I started the journey of asking questions and learning about other people. And then he invited me to stay over. At this point in my life, I'm only used to sharing a bed with my spouse. So I started to feel a little uncomfortable when learning about the sleeping arrangements. But I said yes, and it was awesome, and my heart was touched. Somebody offered to share their own bed to give me a good experience. So I continued. I said yes to something a lot more uncommon in my culture, eating food with my hands. It was awesome. I learned to stay connected to the food in new ways. The flavors were different. I was more mindful and appreciative as I ate. I learned a new respect for something that I once thought of as disgusting. Next, I booked a second-class train ticket, when for only $3 more could have had a first-class train ticket, with air conditioning and space. But I had to work through 4.5 hours of discomforts and crowds. When feeling very uncomfortable, I would offer snacks to the people around me, and I would smile. And let me tell you, I offered a lot of snacks. But this helped me see people for people. And I felt more connected to them. This guy here on the right with his legs stretched out, because of our friendly interactions, he even offered to buy me chai tea, and we drank it together and we enjoyed our time, even though we couldn't speak each other's language. The discomforts weren't as bad when focusing on others. Fourth, I didn't make a single plan for 3 weeks, so I could stay focused on what mattered the very most to me. I couldn't be distracted by things that were not important. I surrounded myself with the very people that I struggled with. I would just wake up in the morning and just start walking, looking for any opportunity to connect. The young man here on the right pulled over his motorcycle and said, "What are you doing? Where are you from?" I told him, and then I got on his motorcycle, and he took me out to ice cream. And then he took me home to meet his family. And I met his mom, who cooked us dinner, and then he offered to let me stay over the night. It was amazing. The kindness. These were valuable, priceless experiences that taught me we don't need to be afraid of trying new things, and that this is a great world full of great people. Number 5, I asked questions instead of making assumptions. There were times I was so uncomfortable I just wanted to leave, but I used those as opportunities to find out why I might be feeling uncomfortable. I would ask questions such as, "What's your favorite part about living in India? What's the most important thing for you? How did you become friends with the friends you have now? What matters the most? What are some good ways of living a good life? Can you guess the answers? Family, friends, travel, and culture. When I heard the answers to these questions, it helped me connect deeper to them and helped me realize that we had more in common than I originally thought. So I continued. I asked questions about the customs and practices of India, so I didn't have to make assumptions, and from an American perspective, which often ended to be negative and one-sided. I even learned what matters to their religion and what Hindus teach. I brought a book with me, a holy book that they use called the Bhagavad Gita, and found my favorite phrase. They live in wisdom who see themselves in all and all in them. Do we know what's important to others? And can we find value in it? Although there were still discomforts in India, many of them weren't as bad. When I learned to embrace them, think about them differently, try them. I even learned that India does some things significantly better than we do. For example, there's an incredible respect for the elderly and for parents. And they make time for their family. And they make time for their friends. We're often not as busy as we think we are. We just make ourselves that way. And sometimes with things that don't even really matter. The truth is, we all have biases, even if we don't mean to. We all have our own Indias. We make conscious and unconscious judgments towards others based on skin color, accent, sexual orientation, weight, hygiene, background. We don't need to be ashamed of automatic thoughts, but it is our responsibility to question our first impressions and judgments. Do we only accept those who meet our standards? I want you to know that you can also work on differences you have with people and find compassion and connection. If you're having a hard time with somebody, deliberately give it a second chance and try again. It doesn't have to be some huge thing that will make a difference. It was often the small things for me. A lot of the power to change the way we see others comes from our ability to identify our own fears and beliefs, get outside of ourselves, think differently, get out of our comfort zone, try new things, and ask questions. When we are willing to intentionally understand each other, hearts are softened and beautiful, genuine connections are made. These are powerful ways we make the world a kinder and more connected place for us all. Thank you.